My fellow Dashcam enthusiasts, welcome back to the channel. If you see my prior Hardwire videos, you know how a Hardwire kit works and that we are looking for two sources of power to connect a typical 3-lead Hardwire kit. But how do I actually find out where the yellow wire goes and where the red wire goes? On this video, I'm gonna show you how I find that. And in case you have not seen my other video on how a Hardwire kit works and what each wire does, I'll put a link to that video in the description down below. And as a quick recap, a typical Hardwire kit needs two sources of power. One of them is the accessory power. This wire has to go to a source of power that only has power when the car is in the accessory position or when the car is running. The other type of power that I am looking for is called BATT, which is battery power. This wire has to go to a source of power that has power all the time, even when the car is completely off. And now let's take a look at a typical fuse box on a vehicle so I can show you how I find battery power and how I find accessory power. And on this car's fuse box, the very first thing we notice is that we have several empty fuse spaces. Now this is ideal because I would like to tap my Hardwire kit to an empty unused space that can provide ACC power and one that can provide battery power. Unfortunately, if you look closer at the empty fuse spaces, they're not actually connected on the vehicle. So they are not active, so they are not gonna work. So this means that I'm gonna be forced to find battery power and accessory power in a spot that is already being used by another fuse. So let's take a look at the fuse diagram for this vehicle. And on the left hand side, you can see that the very first fuse is for the PCM. That is the car's computer. I definitely do not want to touch that. Now, if I keep going down, I can see that there is an ABS fuse. The ABS is the brake system of the car. Do not want to touch that. I also have the cruise control fuse. I also don't think it's a good idea to tap into this fuse. Moving over to the far right, you can see that the second fuse down is for the BCM. The BCM is the body control module, so that is a car's computer. I definitely do not want to use that fuse spot. There's also an SRS fuse. Typically SRS is a side restraint system, so that is likely an airbag. I definitely do not want to touch the airbag. Turn signals. Probably not a good idea to lose the turn signals when I'm driving if something goes wrong by tapping into this fuse spot. And all the way to the bottom, we have another fuse spot that is for the cluster BCM. This is the speedometer on the vehicle. This is another car's computer. I do not want to pull power from here. Moving over to the middle row of the fuse diagram, the very first fuse is for the cigarette lighter or auxiliary port. Now this port normally does not have power when the car is off, and it has power when the car is on. So this is probably gonna be a good spot for accessory power. And if I keep going down, the very last fuse is for the power mirror memory. Normally anything that needs memory, such as the radio stations of a car or the power mirror settings, needs to have power all the time. So this is gonna be the fuse that I'm gonna use for battery power. But now let me show you how I double check that they actually function for ACC and for BAT. And I have connected my probe to this little bolt right here that provides ground. Then using the other side of the probe, I can touch the fuse for the power mirror, and sure enough, I have power when the car is off, which means I'm gonna use this for battery power. Then I'll touch the fuse for the cigarette lighter adapter. There is no power when the car is off. Now I have the car in accessory position. I'm gonna probe that again. Now there is power, which means I'm gonna use this for accessory power. And I can now remove the fuse and transfer this over to the fuse tab. Now the fuse tab has two positions. I have to insert that into the lower position of the fuse tab. Now I need to check the fuse spot to see which of the two contacts has power. If I touch the top contact, there is no power. If I touch the bottom contact, this is the side that has power. And this is important because fuse tabs have only one correct orientation. The outside blade is normally the one that has to go to the side that has power. So now I'll install the fuse tab with the outside blade facing down. Now I can repeat the process for the accessory power. I'll remove the fuse, install it in the bottom space of the fuse spot. Then I'm gonna check the fuse spot for which side has power. Top contact does not have power. Bottom contact, yep, this side has power. So now I know which way to install my fuse tab on. Again, the outside blade is the one that should go to power. So I'm gonna take the fuse tab and insert that facing down so it is in the correct orientation. But here's an important warning. While the kit that you saw me use on this video uses the yellow wire for battery and the red wire for accessory power, not all Hardwire kits use those colors. I've seen other Hardwire kits where the red wire is for battery and the yellow wire is for accessory. So what I typically do, I go by the labels that are on the Hardwire kit instead of the colors. I also check the instruction manual for the Hardwire kit that I'm installing to make sure I'm gonna wire this thing correctly. And finally, for ground, I'm gonna use one of these bolts. And this one, I just loosened it up a little bit so I can insert the lug underneath it. And once it's there, I'm gonna retighten the bolt again, and now I have a ground connection. And with all three connections made, I can secure any loose cables with some zip ties and close the fuse box. But as easy as that process looks, when the installer is connecting accessory power and connecting battery power, he has to take into consideration what is actually critical in the car so he avoids tapping into those sources of power. Now, it's pretty easy to say, let's avoid the airbag, let's avoid the car computer, let's avoid things like the ABS. Some of the systems on a car are shared, and that can make deciding which is the critical fuse spot to avoid a little more difficult. And this is where an experienced installer is gonna have knowledge of what fuse spots to pull power from and what fuse spots not to pull power from. This is especially true in newer vehicles since they are more sensitive to having an aftermarket device installed on them. The brand new C8 Corvette is a perfect example where some owners had hardwired their radar detectors into their car system, and that created an issue that damaged their reversing camera. Now, unfortunately, the dealer was not gonna honor the warranty in that case because they were pointing the issue as being caused by the Hardwire kit disrupting the electrical system on the car. So normally, most installers are gonna look for an empty spare fuse slot to pull power from than to grab an existing fuse space that is already being used by something, even though that device may look as not critical. It could potentially be. But what if you don't have access to an installer? How could you find out what fuse spot on your vehicle to typically avoid? Well, this is where a lot of the internet forums for your specific car, especially if it happens to be a specialty car, are gonna come in handy. Browsing those forums, looking for other owners that have previously used certain fuse spots and have confirmed that there are no issues are normally gonna be the second best way to guarantee that using a fuse spot is not gonna be a problem. But if you have access to an installer, I would still recommend their services because they're gonna have the experience of having installed a Hardwire kit many times on many different models, so they're gonna be able to have those answers already here. So hopefully this video helped you understand where I get accessory power, where I get battery power, and how I make the ground connection. If you guys have any other questions regarding the Hardwire kit installation, please put that in the comments down below. I also place links in the description to other related videos for dashcam installation, as well as my other dashcam reviews. If you found any part of this video helpful, hit the thumbs up button to support the channel, and stay tuned as I have a lot more dashcam videos coming up. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.